Ladies and gentlemen, this is Miss Humbert here. Today we're going to be doing Unit 5 Notes 2. So we're going to talk about graphing quadratics, which is what we started with working on the previous note sheet. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at what all the parts of graphing a quadratic are from yesterday.
The letters K through L.
Excuse this announcement.
Our lecture hall to have your pictures retaken.
All right.
K through L.
So let's go ahead and let's calculate this out. So my A is going to be -1, 6, and 4. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to calculate out the axis of symmetry. Now I know that it's going to open down because my A is negative. So for my axis of symmetry, I'm going to do opposite of B over 2 times A. So -6 divided by 2 times -1 is -2. Divide those out and you're going to get a +3. So for the axis of symmetry, you're going to get that x is equal to 3. So now we want to go ahead and calculate out the vertex. So to calculate out the vertex, what we're going to do is we're going to plug it in. So we're going to do negative, and then I'm going to, wherever I see an x, I am going to be putting that 3 that I found. So then when I calculate all that out, again, if you have a good calculator, it should be pretty easy. You get 13. So then we have 3, 13 for the vertex. Now the y-intercept always comes from the c value, which is 4. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at the steps for graphing a quadratic. Okay, so the first step is to find the vertex. Now these are steps that we talked about yesterday. You're going to find the x-coordinate, which is going to be opposite of b over 2a. Then you're going to plug into original function and solve to find the y-coordinate. Last but not least, you're going to write it as an ordered pair. Now this shouldn't be new, this is a review. So now we're going to find the vertex on problem 2. So go ahead and flip your thing over to the other side, your page there. So x is going to be equal to the opposite of b. Well, b is always with the x term, so my b is going to be 6, so the opposite is -6. Over 2 times my a. Now remember, you want to take the time to actually multiply out the bottom. So you get 6 divided by -6, so you get a +1. So your x-coordinate of your vertex then is going to be 1. Now we want to get the y-coordinate, so I'm going to plug in 1 wherever I see an x. And notice again that I'm using those parentheses. So when you plug it into your calculator, you end up getting 7. Oops. So 1, 7 is the vertex. So now let's go ahead and let's take a look at step number 2. So step number 2, if you flip the page back over for graphing a quadratic, is making a table. So you're going to start with the vertex. So we already got the vertex. Then we're going to find the other values. Typically what we do is we pick 2 values to the left and 2 values to the right of the x-coordinate. Now, what does that look like? Let's go ahead and let's take a look at that in problem number 2, where we were. So for problem number 2, I'm going to write my vertex in the center of this chart. Then I want to pick 2 values to the right. So I do that by doing the next 2 values up. And then 2 values to the left, I do that by doing the next 2 values down. So now I need to plug in each of these values to get my y. So here's an important thing to remember, that each of these are going to be the same value for y, and each of those are going to be the same value for y. So when you plug that in, the first thing we're going to plug in is 2. So we're going to plug in 2 to that original quadratic. So we're going to get 3. Now instead of writing x, I'm going to put 2. And that's going to give us 4 when we do that. So that means 2 is 4, and also reflected on the other side of the vertex is 4. Now we're going to do the same thing, except this time we're going to plug 3 in. Again, plugging that into your calculator. So then you're going to get -5 and -5. So now what we want to do is I want to take a look back at step 3. Now what do I do now that I have that chart written? So now you're ready to graph the function. Okay? So step B and C will be uncovered after problem 3. Let's just take a look at those right now while we're on that page. Okay, so we're going to graph the y values. I'll just hold it down, I guess. Okay, so graph the y values from the x and y chart. Then you're going to draw your axis of symmetry. We'll take a look at that in a second, and you're going to mirror the points on the other side of the parabola. So let's go ahead and take a look at problem number 2. Okay, so for problem number 2, what we're going to do is now we're going to graph it. So we're just going to graph the points that we have. So I'm going left 1, down 5, plotting that point. Over 0, up 4, plotting that point. Over 1, up 7, plotting that point. Over 2, up 4, plotting that point. Over 3, down 5, plotting that point. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the parabola in. Now hopefully you can cross your points a lot better than I can, because that didn't go well for me. Okay, so that's our parabola. Now through our vertex we have this invisible axis of symmetry. I do want us to actually draw that line down. So I draw in the dotted line like so. Okay, let's go ahead and let's move on and take a look at example 3. So just as a reminder, when you're taking a look, this is on the front page there, the graph will open up when A is greater than 0, and it will open down when A is less than 0. Now that's important because if it's supposed to open up and your graph opens down, then you know you did something wrong. So let's take a look at number 3. So for number 3, first thing we're going to do is calculate out our x coordinate of our vertex. So we're going to do opposite of our b over 2 times a. Now since there's no value with that a, it's going to be 1. So we have 2 divided by 2 times 1. Well, 2 times 1 is 2. 2 divided by 2 is just 1. So the x coordinate of my vertex is 1. Why? I'm going to plug in each of those values. So I'm going to plug in 1 squared, then I'm going to get plus 2 times 1 plus 1. So wherever I see an x, I'm putting a 1. And when you calculate all of that out in your calculator, you end up getting 0. So I'm going to go ahead and plug 0 here. I'm going to go greater going down, and then going this way, it's going to get 2 smaller. Now remember that these two values are the same, and these two values are the same. So I'm going to take this 1 out, and now I'm going to plug in 2 and see what I get. Well, when I plug in 2, oops, I have this wrong. This should be a -1. Because that's a negative. That is my fault, guys. When you plug in -1, though, you do get 0. That's my fault. -1, 0, 1, -2, -3. Sorry about that, guys. So those should be matching. Okay, so now you're going to plug in, instead of plugging in 2, we're going to plug in 0. And when you plug in 0, you end up getting 1. So that means that this is 1 and this is 1. Then we're going to actually plug in 1 this time instead of -1 like last time should have been. And when you plug in 1, you end up getting 4. So now we're going to go ahead and graph this. So we're going left 3 and up 4 and plotting that point. Then we're going left 2 and up 1 and plotting that point. We're going over 0 and down 1, which is -1. Oops, left 0 and up 0. Goodness, I'm struggling. Over 0 and up 1. And then over 1 and up 4. So now we're going to go ahead and graph that parabola. Okay, so that's what your parabola should look like, and it should be sitting on the x-axis. I kind of wish this problem had never happened. It's just not going well, so it should look like that. There we go. Let's do better on number 4. How does that sound? So first thing we need to do is calculate out our vertex. So we're going to do opposite of b over 2 times a. 2 divided by 2 is going to give me 1. So that's what I'm going to plug in for x. So I'm going to do 1 squared minus 2 times 1 minus 8. So that's 1 minus 2 minus 8, and that's going to give me a -9. So now I'm going to go ahead and make my chart. Okay, so I'm going to put 1 and -9 as my vertex. So I'm going up, going this way, and I'm going down, going this way. These two values are the same, and these two values are the same. So let's go ahead and let's plug in -1 for x. So I'm going to do -1 squared minus 2 times -1 minus 8. Well, when I plug in -1, I get -5. So this is -5, and this is -5. It actually doesn't matter which of these values you choose to plug in. Both will yield the same answer. If you don't believe me, try plugging in the other one and making sure. Otherwise, I am very, very wrong, aren't I? So then this is going to be at a -8. So now what we're going to do is we are going to graph that. So we're going to graph our vertex first. So we're going left 1 and then down 9. Okay, then we want to go over 0 and down 8, which is here. And then over -1 and down 5, which is there. On the other side, oh my gosh, I need to go on 1. Goodness, Miss Humbert. Okay, let's try this again. So we're going -1 down 5, which is here. Over 0 down 8, which is here. Over 1 down 9, which is here. Over 2 down 8, which is here. Over 3 down 5, which is here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to connect that. Then through the vertex we have that invisible line that is the axis of symmetry. So your parabola should be looking symmetrical on either side of that. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at number 5. So for number 5, I'm going to have x and y, and first thing I want to do is calculate out, my vertex. Okay, so there is no b. So my b is 0 and my c is 0. So x is equal to opposite of b over 2 times a. Well, 0 divided by anything is going to be 0. So the x-coordinate of my vertex is 0. So I get y is equal to a -3 times 0 squared, which is going to be 0. So my vertex then is going to be at 0, 0. So I'm going up this way and down this way. So now I'm going to go ahead and plug in each of these values for x. Well, when I plug in 1 or -1, I get -3. When I plug in -2 or positive 2, I get -12. Well, that's going to be off our graph, but mainly for a parabola, you need 3 points. So we're going over 0, 0, and then we're going over 1 and then down 3, which is here. Left 1 and then down 3, which is here. Now the rest of that's going to be off our graph, so I don't want to cross 2 before I exit the graph itself. Okay, so then through the vertex is that axis of symmetry. So that's going to conclude the first part of your video. Go ahead and you're going to complete the next couple practice problems on the practice sheet so you can check the Schoology assignment to see which one. Thanks for listening.